My wife sent me divorce papers on my birthday. She didn't expect my gift to her.
I remember setting the papers down on the kitchen counter, the same granite countertop we had picked out together during our kitchen remodel 5 years ago. My hands were shaking. I felt oddly calm, like I was watching someone else's life fall apart instead of my own. My phone buzzed. A text from Catherine. "You deserve to be alone after everything. Don't fight this, William." 32 years, 3 children, a home we built together, a small business I had grown from nothing while she pursued her career as a hospital administrator, all of it ending on the day I was supposed to celebrate another year of life. I poured myself a cup of coffee and sat at our dining room table. The house was quiet. Too quiet. Catherine had moved out 3 weeks ago, claiming she needed space to think. Now I understood what she had really been thinking about. As I sipped my coffee, memories flooded back. The night I stayed up with our son Michael when he had pneumonia, while Catherine slept because she had an important meeting the next morning. The family vacations I planned that she often cut short for work emergencies. The business dinners I attended alone because her schedule was always too demanding. I had believed we were a team, that the sacrifices were worthwhile because we were building something together. What fools we become in the name of love. My phone rang, my best friend David. "Happy birthday, buddy. Got any plans today?" The irony nearly made me laugh. Catherine filed for divorce this morning. Silence then. "Jesus, Will. On your birthday. I don't even know what to say." "There is Seymour Carnes," I said, scrolling through old text messages on my phone. "Remember when you thought you saw her with someone at that restaurant in Portland last month?" "Yeah, but she said it was a work colleague." It was Mark Sanders. Mark, my friend of 20 years, the man who had been a groomsman at our wedding, the man who had helped me build the deck in our backyard just last summer. David swore under his breath. "How did you find out?" "Their messages. She left her tablet logged into her email when she moved out." I hadn't been snooping, not intentionally, but when notification after notification kept appearing on her forgotten tablet, the truth became impossible to ignore. The emails and texts went back 18 months. Vacations I thought she'd taken for work. Late nights at the office that weren't a tea spent at the office at all. Plans for their future, a future that apparently required my absence. "I'll come over," David offered. "You shouldn't to be alone right now." "No," I said firmly. "I need some time to think." After hanging up, I walked through our home. The home I had largely paid for while Catherine focused on advancing her career. I had supported her ambitions, encouraged her goals. I had been proud of her success, never jealous, never resentful of the time it took from our family. In our bedroom, her closet still held half her clothes. I opened her dresser drawer and found it, the small leather-bound journal she kept for years. I had never read it before, respecting her privacy. But now the rules had changed. I sat on the edge of our bed and opened it to a random page from 3 years ago. "William is so frustratingly content with mediocrity. He could have expanded the business years ago, but he is too risk-averse. Sometimes I wonder what my life would be like if I married someone with more ambition, more vision." I flipped to another page, dated just 6 months ago. "Mark understands me in ways William never has. He sees the real me. With William, I always feel like I am playing a role. The supportive wife, the devoted mother. It is exhausting pretending to be happy in a marriage that feels more like an obligation than a choice." The words cut deeper than any knife. I had believed our marriage was solid, imperfect, yes, but built on mutual respect and shared history. Instead, I had been living a lie. I closed the journal, feeling a strange sense of clarity emerging through the pain. I wouldn't rage. I wouldn't beg. I wouldn't give Catherine the satisfaction of seeing me broken. I picked up the divorce papers again, reading the terms more carefully. She wanted the house, half my business, and a substantial alimony. Of course she did. I reached for my phone and called James Patterson, an attorney I knew through my business connections. Not to fight the divorce, no, Catherine was right about one thing. This marriage was over. But I wouldn't let 3 decades of manipulation end with me being stripped of everything I worked for. As I hung up the phone, I made a decision. I would face this with dignity, and when the time came, I would hand Catherine an envelope of my own. The days following my birthday blurred together as I methodically began uncovering the extent of Catherine S. deception. Each new discovery was like peeling back another layer of a life I thought I knew. James Patterson, my attorney, set me up with a forensic accountant named Rachel. Financial infidelity often accompanies the emotional kind, she explained during our first meeting. People planning to leave a marriage typically start hiding assets months, sometimes years in advance. She was right. Catherine had opened a separate bank account 2 years ago, around the time she received a substantial promotion. Paychecks that should have gone into our joint account had been diverted. Bonuses never mentioned. A pattern of deliberate financial separation that I had completely missed. How could I not have seen this? I asked Rachel, embarrassed by my own naivety. Don't blame yourself, she said kindly. People who are trusting don't look for deception. It is actually a good quality, just with the wrong person. That night, I found myself rereading entries from Catherine S. journal, each page revealing more of her contempt for our life together. Had dinner with Claire today. She agrees that William has held me back all these years. If I'd married someone with connections and ambition like hers, who knows where I could be now? Claire says I shouldn't feel guilty about making plans to leave. After all, I've forgiven him 30 years of my life. Claire, Catherine, and sister, the same woman who had hugged me at every family gathering, who had called me brother, and accepted my help when she needed money for her son's college tuition. I called my son Michael, who at 29 was the oldest of our 3 children. He lived in Seattle with his wife and worked as an architect. Dad, I've been trying to call you. Mum told us yesterday about the divorce. What exactly did she say? I kept my voice neutral. Michael hesitated. She said you two had grown apart, that you'd been emotionally distant for years. She made it sound like it was mutual. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Did she mention the divorce papers she had delivered on my birthday, or her relationship with Mark Sanders? Silence, then. Mark? Dad, are you serious? Completely. 18 months at least. Michael swore under his breath. I am coming home this weekend. Don to do anything until I get there. After we hung up, I sat at my desk looking through our family photos. Catherine and I on our wedding day, her in a simple white dress, me gazing at her like she was the answer to every question I'd ever had. The kids, birthdays, graduations, family vacations, a catalogue of moments I'd thought were building blocks of a shared life. Had she been unhappy all along? Or had something changed? When had I become someone she could discard so easily? I opened my laptop and checked our cell phone records, which I still had access to through our family plan. Countless calls and texts to Mark, going back much further than I had initially discovered. Some on days I specifically remembered. Our anniversary last year, Christmas morning, the day of Michael S. wedding. While looking for an old tax document in Catherine S. home office, I found a folder hidden behind her reference books. Inside were printed emails between her and Claire dating back 3 years. I've been moving money into the separate account like you suggested, Catherine had written. William doesn't pay attention to the finances as long as the bills get paid. I should have enough set aside by next year to make my move. Claire S.'s response was equally calculating. Smart. Make sure you document any negative interactions. Your attorney will need evidence that the marriage was deteriorating to strengthen your position. Remember, in equitable distribution states, the court considers each spouse's contributions. Emphasize your career advancement and minimize his business success. My hands were steady as I photographed these emails and added them to the growing file on my laptop. Not for revenge, for protection. That night I received a text from Catherine. My attorney says you haven't responded to the filing yet. Don't make this difficult, William. I didn't respond. Let her think I was falling apart. Let her believe I was too devastated to act. The next day, I met with James again. He reviewed what I found. This definitely strengthens our position, he said, organizing the documents. But William, I need to ask, what do you want out of this? I considered his question. Justice, fairness, I don't want to punish Catherine, but I want to let her take everything I've worked for. I want to let her rewrite our history. James nodded. That as a healthy perspective. Too many people let emotion drive them to destructive places. We'll prepare a counter-proposal that is fair but protects your interests." As I left his office, I felt a strange sense of purpose replacing the initial shock. Catherine had been planning her exit for years, manipulating circumstances and perceptions. She believed she was in control of this narrative. She had no idea what was coming. When I arrived home, there was a voicemail from our youngest daughter, Emma. "Dad, Mum said you were making this divorce difficult. Why can't you just be adults about this? It is not like your relationship was perfect." I closed my eyes, feeling a new wave of pain. Catherine was already turning our children against me. Of course she was. It was all part of the strategy she and Claire had devised. But Michael was coming this weekend. At least one of my children wanted to hear my side. It was a start. I walked to my office and opened the safe hidden behind a landscape painting, a safe Catherine had forgotten existed. Inside was a sealed envelope. I had started preparing it the day after finding those first messages, adding to it methodically as each new piece of evidence emerged. Soon Catherine would understand that her carefully constructed plan had one fatal flaw. She had severely underestimated the man she had married. When Michael arrived that Saturday morning, the strain of the past week was etched on my face. He embraced me in the driveway, a bear hug that nearly broke my composure. "You look terrible, Dad," he said, his voice gentle with concern. I managed a weak smile. "Thanks, just what every man wants to hear." Inside, I made coffee while Michael examined the divorce papers and the evidence ID gathered. His expression darkened as he flipped through Catherine's journal entries and the emails between her and Claire. "This is—" He shook his head, searching for words. "I can't believe Mom would do this." I sat across from him at the kitchen table. I couldn't tea either at first. Michael ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so like mine it startled me. "All those years, she was building this narrative about you to us kids, how you were emotionally unavailable, how you put the business before family." "And you believed her," I said quietly. He nodded, shame evident in his eyes. "We didn't know any better, Dad. She was so convincing." He hesitated. "There's something else you should know. Mom has been telling everyone she supported you financially while you started the business, that without her salary, you would have failed." I stared at him, momentarily speechless. Then I stood and walked to my office, returning with a worn leather ledger. I placed it on the table. "This is every expense, every loan, every financial decision from when I started Westbrook Construction. Catherine contributed exactly $8,000 over 3 years. I paid her back with interest once we were profitable." I tapped the ledger. "It is all documented here, including her signed acknowledgement of repayment." Michael examined the meticulous records. Why would she lie about something so easily disproven? "Because she thought I wouldn't fight back," I replied. "She is counting on me to fall apart." Over the next few hours, Michael and I developed a strategy. He helped me organize financial records demonstrating my contributions to our marriage, not just monetary, but the countless hours ID spent raising our children while Catherine built her career. "Remember when Mom missed my high school graduation for that conference?" Michael asked suddenly. I nodded. Catherine had claimed it was unavoidable, a career-making opportunity. "She was with Mark," Michael said flatly. "I saw the hotel receipt when I was helping her organize tax documents last year. I didn't think anything of it then, but now, another piece of the puzzle falling into place, another betrayal to process." On Sunday, Michael and I visited James Patterson's office to refine our approach. James reviewed our documentation with approving nods. "This is precisely what we need," he said. "Now, let us discuss the counter-proposal." I was clear about my priorities: a fair division of assets based on actual contributions, protection of my business, and most importantly, the truth about our marriage preserved for our children. "I am not interested in taking Catherine to the cleaners," I explained. "I just won't let her rewrite our history or take what is rightfully mine." James drafted a comprehensive counter-proposal that evening, and Michael stayed an extra day to help finalize it. We worked methodically, without emotion clouding our judgment. When Michael left on Monday, he hugged me tightly. "I'm sorry, Dad. for believing her version all these years. "You have nothing to apologize for," I assured him. After he left, I received a call from Emma, my youngest. Her tone was different, hesitant, uncertain. "Dad, Michael called me. Is it true about Mom and Mark?" I confirmed it as gently as possible, offering to show her the evidence when she was ready. There was a long silence before she spoke again. "I've been so awful to you. Mom made it sound like you were the villain. It is okay, sweetheart. You didn't know." By Wednesday, both Emma and our middle child, Sarah, had seen the evidence. The narrative Catherine had constructed began crumbling around her. Catherine's response was predictable. She called that night, her voice cold with fury. "What are you doing, William? Turning our children against me?" "I'm simply showing them the truth," I replied calmly. "Something you should have done from the beginning. You had no right to share private communications. And you had no right to lie to our children about their father," I countered, still maintaining my composure. "Or to plot with your sister to take what doesn't belong to you." Her silence spoke volumes. "The counter-proposal will be delivered to your attorney tomorrow," I continued. "It is fair, Catherine, more than fair considering the circumstances." "You think you've won something here?" Her voice trembled with rage. "This isn't over." "No," I agreed, "but it will be soon." After hanging up, I opened the safe and removed the envelope. Inside was everything I had meticulously compiled: financial records, evidence of her affair, her documented attempt to manipulate our divorce settlement, and a personal letter I had written over several days. It wasn't full about revenge. It was about restoration, of truth, of dignity, of the respect I deserved after 32 years of marriage. I added the final document to the envelope, a proposed settlement that would allow both of us to move forward with our lives, based on fairness rather than deception. As I sealed the envelope, I felt an unexpected sense of peace. Catherine had thought me weak, malleable, easily discarded. She would soon discover how thoroughly she had misjudged the man who had loved her for over 3 decades, the man who had chosen dignity over despair. The law offices of Harrington and Wells were housed in a sleek downtown building with floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the city. I arrived 15 minutes early, dressed in a charcoal suit that Catherine had never seen, a deliberate choice to show her a version of me she didn't recognize. James Patterson met me in the lobby, his calm demeanor steadying my nerves. "Remember," he said quietly as we rode the elevator, "no matter what happens in there, stay composed. This is about business now, not emotion." I nodded, the envelope secure in my briefcase. Inside that simple manila package was the culmination of weeks of preparation and the key to reclaiming my dignity. The conference room was intimidatingly formal, a long mahogany table, leather chairs, and city views that reminded everyone of the high stakes involved. Catherine was already seated beside her attorney, Edward Harrington, a man known for his aggressive approach to high-asset divorces. She looked smaller somehow, her tailored navy suit hanging slightly loose on her frame. Our eyes met briefly as I entered. I detected a flicker of surprise at my composed appearance, quickly masked by practiced indifference. "Mr. Westbrook," Harrington greeted me with professional courtesy that didn't reach his eyes. "Shall we begin?" James placed our counter-proposal on the table. "Before we discuss specific terms, we'd like to address some concerning issues that have come to light." Catherine shifted uncomfortably as James methodically outlined the financial discrepancies we'd uncovered, the hidden accounts, the diverted income, the deliberate attempt to undervalue my business contributions. Harrington's expression remained neutral, but I noticed his gaze sharpen. Catherine hadn't told him everything. "Furthermore," James continued, "we have documentation indicating Mrs. Westbrook and her sister planned this divorce strategically, including coaching on how to create a narrative that would disadvantage Mr. Westbrook." "These are serious allegations," Harrington responded, glancing at Catherine. "Perhaps we should take a brief recess to discuss—" "There is no need," Catherine interrupted, her voice tight. "This is simply William's attempt to distract from the central issues." I remained silent, watching as she slipped into the role she perfected, the reasonable party dealing with an unreasonable spouse. James slid the counter-proposal toward Harrington. We believe this represents a fair division based on actual contributions to the marriage and family assets. As Harrington reviewed the document, Catherine leaned forward. "William," she said, her voice softening into the tone she'd always used when trying to manage me, "this doesn't have to be adversarial. We had 32 years together. Surely we can end this amicably." It was the first time she de-acknowledged our marriage as anything other than a burden. The timing was calculated, of course, designed to make me question my resolve. "I agree," I said calmly. "That is why for proposed terms that are fair to both of us." Her expression flickered with surprise at my composure. She had expected anger, perhaps pleading. My calm determination clearly unsettled her. Harrington finished reading and consulted quietly with Catherine. Their whispered exchange grew tense, her composure cracking slightly as she realized her carefully constructed narrative was unraveling. "These terms are unacceptable," Harrington finally stated. "Mrs. Westbrook A.'s contributions to the family significantly exceed what S. acknowledged here. We are prepared to document every financial contribution from both parties over the past 32 years, James countered smoothly, including the startup capital for Mr. Westbrook's business, which Mrs. Westbrook has misrepresented to family and friends." Catherine's cheeks flushed. "That is not—" "We have bank records, Catherine," I interrupted quietly, "and your signed acknowledgement of repayment." The room fell silent. This was the first time I'd spoken directly to her during the meeting, and the impact was precisely what I'd intended. She hadn't expected me to come armed with facts rather than emotions. Harrington requested a private consultation with his client. As they stepped out, James gave me an approving nod. "You are doing exactly what you need to do," he said. "Stay the course." When they returned, the atmosphere had shifted. Catherine's expression was carefully composed, but I could see the tension in her shoulders, the slight tremor in her hands as she arranged her papers. "We were prepared to consider a revised proposal," Harrington announced. "However, Mrs. Westbrook has some non-negotiable requirements regarding the family home and ongoing support." The discussion proceeded with clinical precision. Assets evaluated, contributions calculated, arguments presented and countered. Throughout it all, I maintained the calm demeanor that had so unsettled Catherine from the beginning. Finally, after nearly 3 hours, we reached a tentative agreement. The terms were far more equitable than Catherine's initial demands: my business protected, the house to be sold and proceeds divided, retirement accounts split based on actual contributions. As Harrington prepared the revised documents for our signatures, Catherine excused herself to use the restroom. The momentary privacy gave James a chance to confirm I was satisfied with the outcome. "It is fair," I said. "That is all I wanted." When Catherine returned, Harrington presented the final agreement. I read through it carefully before signing each page, feeling the weight of 32 years lifting with each signature. Catherine signed last, her pen moving swiftly across the paper as if she couldn't complete the task quickly enough. When she finished, she closed her portfolio with an air of finality. "Is that everything?" she asked, already rising from her chair. "Actually," I said, reaching for my briefcase, "there was one more thing." I removed the envelope I had prepared so carefully and placed it on the table between us. "What's this?" she asked, suspicion narrowing her eyes. "Something you should read in private," I replied. Catherine stared at the envelope, uncertainty replacing her practiced confidence. This wasn't part of her script, and I could see her calculating whether to accept it or refuse. Curiosity won. She picked up the envelope and slipped it into her bag without another word. As we left the conference room, Catherine walked ahead, her heels clicking rapidly against the marble floor, eager to escape, to process what had just happened. I watched her go, feeling neither triumph nor sorrow, only freedom. 3 days after the divorce was finalized, I sold the house. I could not bear to stay in rooms haunted by 3 decades of memories, some genuine, others now tainted by Catherine's ex-deception. I found a modern apartment downtown, closer to my business, and within walking distance of the riverfront park, where I had always found peace. The move was liberating. I kept only what truly mattered: family photos, my father's antique desk, books that had shaped my thinking. Everything else I either sold, donated, or left for Catherine to claim. Material possessions seemed trivial compared to reclaiming my sense of self. I hadn't heard from Catherine since our meeting at the attorney's office. I wondered if she had opened the envelope, read the letter I had written, not in anger, but in truth. Part of me expected a furious call or message, but there was only silence, a silence that spoke volumes. On my first Saturday in the new apartment, Michael and his wife Jen came to help me settle in. Emma joined us later, bringing lunch from my favorite deli. "This place suits you, Dad," Emma said, looking around the open concept space with its large windows and minimalist design. "It feels honest somehow." I understood what she meant. There was no pretense here, no facade of domestic perfection, just clean lines, natural light, and the promise of a fresh start. As we ate, Michael asked the question I had been expecting. "Have you heard from Mom since?" I shook my head. "Not directly. Claire called to tell me what a terrible mistake I'd made." I hung up. Emma frowned. "Mom has been weird, posting all these inspirational quotes on social media about rising from adversity and finding yourself after betrayal. Like she is the victim. Let her have her narrative," and I said, surprising myself with how little it bothered me. "I know the truth. You know the truth. That's enough." Later that afternoon, David stopped by with a housewarming gift, an expensive bottle of scotch and 2 crystal glasses. "For new beginnings," he said, pouring us each a measure, "and for surviving what would have broken most men." We sat on my new balcony overlooking the city, the autumn sun casting long shadows across the buildings. "I keep waiting to feel devastated," I admitted. "Isn't that what is supposed to happen after a divorce?" David considered this, swirling the amber liquid in his glass. "Maybe when you lose something real, but you didn't lose a good marriage, Will. You lost the illusion of one." His words resonated with a truth I was still coming to terms with. What I mourned wasn't a Catherine's absence, but the death of what I had believed our marriage to be. "Mark called me," David said after a while, wanted to explain his side. I raised an eyebrow. "And?" "I told him there is no explanation for betraying a friend of 20 years. Then I blocked his number." David smiled grimly. "Some lines can be uncrossed." That night, after everyone had gone, I stood at my window watching the city lights. For the first time in my adult life, I answered to no one. My time was my own, my choices unencumbered by the need to accommodate someone who had never truly valued me. The freedom was both exhilarating and terrifying. The following week, I threw myself into work, implementing changes I had contemplated for years but had always hesitated to pursue. I expanded our service area, hired 2 new project managers, and launched a marketing campaign targeting high-end renovations. Catherine's criticism of my lack of ambition had never been accurate. I'd simply prioritized stability for our family over aggressive growth. Now, without that constraint, I could take calculated risks that felt right for me. Not everyone in my life understood my apparent resilience. Sarah, our middle child, visited 2 weeks after the divorce was finalized, concern etched on her face. "Dad, you don't have to pretend you're okay," she said over dinner at a restaurant near my new apartment. "It is normal to be angry, to grieve." I set down my fork, considering how to explain what I was experiencing. "I did grieve, sweetheart, for weeks before the divorce was even filed. But now," I searched for the right words, "now I am discovering who I am without your mother's expectations shaping my life." Sarah studied me, her expression softening. "You seem different, more present." "I am present," I realized aloud, for the first time in years. That night I received a text from Catherine. "We need to talk about what was in that envelope." I read it twice before setting my phone aside without responding. Whatever she wanted to say could wait. I had waited for years, for appreciation, for understanding, for the kind of partnership I had thought we shared. Now it was her turn to wait. Instead of calling her back, I pulled out a notebook and began listing things I had always wanted to do, but had deferred. Travel to Scotland to trace my ancestral roots, learn to sail, take cooking classes, volunteer with the youth mentorship program I had always admired. For 32 years I had fit my dreams around Catherine S. needs and ambitions. Now at 52, I had the chance to rediscover desires I had set aside so long ago they felt almost like meeting old friends. The next morning, Catherine was waiting outside my office, her posture rigid with tension. She looked different, smaller somehow, less certain. "You can just ignore me, William," she said as I approached. "I am not ignoring you," I replied calmly. I was prioritizing myself for a change. Her eyes narrowed. "The letter you wrote, the things you said were all true," I finished for her. "If you want to discuss it, call my office and make an appointment." I walked past her into the building, feeling her stunned gaze on my back. The old William would have stopped, would have accommodated her demand for immediate attention, but I wasn't that man anymore. And as I continued through my day, meeting with clients, reviewing designs, mentoring my newest employee, I realized something profound. I didn't miss the man I had been. Not at all. Spring arrived 6 months after the divorce, bringing with it a sense of renewal that mirrored my inner transformation. The business was thriving under the new direction. My relationship with my children had deepened through honesty and shared healing, and I had rediscovered parts of myself long dormant during my marriage. On a mild April evening, I found myself at a charity event for the youth mentorship program I had recently joined. The ballroom was elegantly decorated, filled with community leaders and philanthropists supporting a cause dear to my heart. William Westbrook. I turned at the sound of a familiar voice, one I hadn't heard in nearly 3 decades. Rebecca Miller stood before me, her smile exactly as I remembered it from college. Her auburn hair now had elegant strands of silver, but her eyes held the same warmth that had drawn me to her all those years ago. "Rebecca," I said, surprised at how easily her name came to my lips after so many years. "I had no idea you were back in town." She laughed, the sound rich and genuine. "I moved back last year to be closer to my mother. She is 91 and still insists on living independently." We fell into conversation as if the decades had been mere months. Rebecca had built a successful career as an architect in Chicago, raised a daughter as a single mother, and recently opened her own firm specializing in sustainable design. "And you?" she asked, her gaze direct and interested. "Last I heard, you were married with a growing family." "Divorced," I replied simply. "Recently." She nodded, no judgment in her expression. "I've been there, it reshapes you. For the better, I think," I admitted, though it took me a while to see it that way. We spent the rest of the evening talking, our conversation flowing from professional interests to books we'd read to places we hoped to visit. It felt effortless, a connection based on genuine interest rather than obligation or habit. When Rebecca suggested coffee the following weekend, I accepted without hesitation. That coffee led to dinner, and dinner to more conversations. We moved slowly, both of us cautious after past disappointments, but there was an undeniable ease between us. Catherine S.'s reaction to my emerging relationship with Rebecca was predictably self-centered. Emma reported that her mother had described it as a pathetic rebound and proof of a midlife crisis. I found I didn't care about her opinion, a liberating realization. "Are you happy, Dad?" Emma asked one evening after meeting Rebecca for the first time. "I am," I said, realizing the simple truth of it. "Not because of Rebecca, though she is part of it. I am happy because I am living authentically now." Emma smiled, squeezing my hand. "It shows. I don't remember ever seeing you this relaxed." By the time my 53rd birthday approached, my life had transformed in ways I couldn't have imagined a year earlier. The business had expanded to neighboring counties. I had reconnected with old friends Catherine had subtly pushed away, and my relationship with Rebecca had deepened into something solid and nurturing. I decided to host a small celebration at my apartment, nothing elaborate, just good food, better company, and no pretense. As I prepared for the evening, I realized this would be my first birthday in over 3 decades not shaped by Catherine S. expectations. Rebecca arrived early to help, moving around my kitchen with comfortable familiarity as we prepared the meal together. There was an easiness between us I had never experienced with Catherine, a partnership of equals, each supportive of the other's independence. "I have something for you," she said, handing me a small package wrapped in simple blue paper. It is not much, but inside was a vintage compass, its brass casing polished to a warm glow. I opened it to find the needle pointing steadily north, unwavering in its purpose. "For your new adventures," Rebecca explained, "so you always find your way wherever you choose to go." The thoughtfulness of the gift, so perfectly aligned with who I was becoming, touched me deeply. It wasn't extravagant or showy, but meaningful in ways a more expensive present could never be. As our guests arrived, my children, David, colleagues who had become friends, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. These were people who saw me clearly and valued me for who I truly was, not for what I could provide or how I could advance their agendas. Midway through the evening, my phone buzzed with a text from Catherine. "Happy birthday. I hope you've had time to reconsider some things." I showed it to Rebecca, who raised an eyebrow. "Are you going to respond?" I thought for a moment, then deleted the message without replying. "Some chapters are better left closed." She nodded, understanding in her eyes, and new ones opened. After everyone had gone home, Rebecca and I sat on the balcony, enjoying the quiet and each other's company. The city spread out before us, a tapestry of lights against the night sky. "I've been thinking," Rebecca said, her voice thoughtful. "My lease is up next month, and with the new projects my firm has taken on in this area..." I turned to look at her, heart quickening at what she might be suggesting. "I am not proposing we rush anything," she continued, "but perhaps we could consider finding a place together, something that would be ours, not yours or mine. A fresh start." The old William might have hesitated, might have worried about appearances or timing, but I had learned that life was too short for artificial timelines. "I think," I said slowly, "that would be perfect." Later that night, I remembered the envelope I had given Catherine at our final meeting. Inside had been not just the evidence of her deception, but a letter expressing what our marriage had meant to me, what her betrayal had cost, and most importantly, my choice to move forward without bitterness. The final line had read, "I forgive you, not because you deserve it, but because I deserve peace." As I drifted toward sleep, Rebecca's steady breathing beside me, I realized I had found more than peace. I had found a life richer and more authentic than I had ever known, not despite Catherine's betrayal, but because of the strength I had discovered in its aftermath. 1 year ago, I had received divorce papers on my birthday, along with the cruel message that I deserved to be alone. Tonight, surrounded by genuine love and looking toward a future bright with possibility, I knew those words had been Catherine's greatest miscalculation. I had never deserved to be alone. I had deserved to be free,